Good afternoon, everyone, and welcome to our closing luncheon. I want to thank the sponsors of today's luncheon, ABM Industries, Honeywell, and Motorola. Please give them a round of applause. And I also want to announce that we're partnering with the American Beverage Association to fight childhood obesity. Now, this 3-year partnership will provide money and best practices to cities on the front line of the childhood obesity epidemic. In January, we will award $445,000 in grants to cities of all sizes to support and enhance your work on tackling this very difficult issue. Now, the partnership is an extension of the Mayor's Healthy Cities campaign and will also include a national public awareness campaign. It will connect mayors with innovative and cost-effective strategies to successfully reduce childhood obesity in their cities. So let's give a big thank you to the American Beverage Association for this new partnership. Now, I'm very pleased to introduce Ed Rendell. You know, far be it from Ed to get in the way between you and your meal, so please enjoy that meal. Now, many of you know that he served as mayor of the city of Philadelphia. From 1992 to 2000, he was an extremely active member of the Conference of Mayors. I remember watching him from afar. I believe he's one of the great mayors who have served a big city anywhere in the country. He was governor of Pennsylvania from 2003 to 2011. He chaired the National Governors Association. He was the head of the Democratic National Committee. He's now, I guess, a political analyst on MSNBC. And through all of these jobs, one thing has been very consistent. Governor Rendell believes in creating jobs through rebuilding our nation's infrastructure. He's the co-chair of Building America's Future and has never stopped pressing for infrastructure investment. I can tell you that today, the 30-10 plan, which is morphed into America Fast Forward, would not have the kind of bipartisan support that it has today if it weren't for Governor Rendell. He was among the first to say, wow, this is innovative. This is on the front lines of creative, innovative thinking for infrastructure investment. So I'm very pleased to have the governor here with us. He was with me in Los Angeles last summer, where we highlighted the jobs that can be created, the traffic that will be reduced through America Fast Forward. Please join me in welcoming my friend, our friend, Governor Ed Rendell.
Good afternoon, everyone. Let me begin by saying, sometimes I get asked by my constituents, which job did you like better, mayor or governor? And let me make it absolutely abundantly clear, mayor is the best job to have, no question about it. You know, 5 or 6 years into governor, my time as governor, I said that if you woke me up in the middle of the night, 3:30 in the morning, and flashed a light in my face and said, "Who are you?" I'm certain I would have responded, Mayor Rendell, because all of us are on the front lines. All of us are the first responders. Our job is hands-on, it's visceral. It's a job absolutely born for problem solvers, and everyone in this room are pragmatic problem solvers. And it's a job that isn't partisan. There is no Democratic way or Republican way to police the streets. There's no Democrat or Republican way to pick up trash. So it's a great job. I know most of you are veterans. To the fairly newly elected mayors, enjoy it. It's the best job you'll ever have. My congratulations to your new team. In Mayor Villaraigosa, you have gotten one of the true visionary leaders in the United States of America. I'm going to talk a little bit more about the 30-10 initiative when I get into my topic of infrastructure, but Antonio Villaraigosa is an innovator. He gets things done. He's not afraid to break the mold. my own mayor, Michael Nutter, and I am a citizen and a voter in Philadelphia. And recently, as of January 18th, I pay a whole lot more taxes in Philadelphia than I used to. So I congratulate our own mayor, also a visionary and someone who looks to the future and is not afraid to break the mold. And to Scott Smith from Mesa, Arizona, congratulations on ascending to your position as vice president as well. Now, I listened to the tail end of your press conference and I heard about your resolutions. And interestingly, your resolutions are essentially what I want to talk to you about. And we have with us Frank Donahue, who is the executive director, president of the Chamber of Commerce, U.S. Chamber of Commerce, extraordinarily important. And he's going to deliver, I think, somewhat the same message as I am. And the message is that we better get on the stick, and we better get on the stick quickly, because the American infrastructure is literally crumbling before our eyes. The American Society of Civil Engineers not only declared that we have an infrastructure deficit gap of $2.2 trillion, but it graded the different components of our infrastructure, not just transportation, but water and wastewater, dams, levees, you name it. And the American infrastructure overall got a D- grade. That is, for the greatest country in the world, for the still richest country in the world, totally unacceptable. How did it happen? Well, it happened fairly quickly. And it happened because we stopped investing in our infrastructure. When Dwight David Eisenhower left the White House in 1961, we were allocating 12% of our domestic non-military spending to infrastructure. Today, we devote 2.5%. We used to lead the world in the percentage of GDP that was allocated to infrastructure. Now we're almost dead last among the developed nations. China and India are investing 5 times as much of their GDP as we are on infrastructure. The port of Shanghai in 3 years will take more containers than all American ports put together. There's something called metallurgical coal. It's very valuable. China doesn't have it. It's found in the United States and Australia. But Australian metallurgical coal is more desirable to the Chinese because it comes with a lower price. Because of labor cost? No. Australia is a high labor cost country. It comes at a higher price because the cost of shipping the metallurgical coal from the place that it's mined to the ports to send it out to China is 9 times greater in the United States than the cost of shipping it from Australia's mining facilities to its ports. So we're losing out in every way. And our failure to revitalize our infrastructure is first and foremost a public safety matter. You've seen it everywhere across this country. When the levees broke in New Orleans, we could have protected those levees if the Army Corps of Engineers hadn't gotten an investment, which is literally 1/30 of what we've laid out in federal dollars repairing the damage, and I'm not even talking about the human damage. Same thing in Cedar Rapids, same thing in Santa Barbara with their pipes. Certainly the same thing in Minneapolis, St. Paul with the bridge, and we could go on and on and on. Secondly, it's a quality of life issue. The average American will spend the equivalent of 4 working weeks tied up in congestion and traffic. Thirdly, it's an economic development issue, as I cited in the statistics about the port and goods movement. No country will remain an economic leader if it cannot move its goods and ship its goods out throughout the global economy quickly, and we are falling way behind our competitor nations. And lastly, it's a jobs issue. And I heard a little bit about your debate, and I heard your president talk about jobs for the troops that are coming home. Well, there is no greater producer of good-paying jobs that cannot be outsourced than infrastructure. Infrastructure produces jobs not only on the construction sites themselves, but it produces jobs in American factories. And as all of you know, manufacturing in this country is deeply challenged. Some people think it's on the brink of extinction. And yet, infrastructure spending creates jobs back in those factories. During the stimulus in Pennsylvania, we received a little bit over $1.1 billion for our transportation infrastructure. And we tracked what happened with that investment. And we found in the first year of stimulus, which was 2009, as compared to 2008, orders for steel in Pennsylvania went up by 43%. Orders for asphalt and concrete went up by over 50%. Orders for aggregate went up by 55%. So good paying jobs in American factories, good paying jobs on American construction sites are created by infrastructure. The United States Department of Transportation estimates that for $1 billion of infrastructure spending, 25,000 jobs are created. Now, we're diddling around, we are fiddling literally while Rome is burning. All of the infrastructure proposals that are before the Congress of the United States, all of the things that are being talked about, including some put forward by our allies, by the Jim Inhofes and the Barbara Boxers and the John Kerrys, even those proposals are meek and are not going to do the job of giving us a first-class, competitive, safe infrastructure that will improve the quality of life and the environment of our country. Simply won't do it. The American Society of Civil Engineers is right on. We have a multi-trillion-dollar infrastructure debt. And I'm going to submit to you a plan, and I'm going to tell you briefly how I think we can fund it. And it's interesting because it keys into the debate that you just finished having. I believe we need to spend $3 trillion over the next 10 years revitalizing the American infrastructure. And remember, the American Society of Civil Engineers say we have to spend $2.2 trillion just putting what we have in good repair, not talking about new roads, not talking about new water systems, not talking about new rail systems. So I think we need to spend $3 trillion, and that breaks down to $300 billion a year. $300 billion a year. A lot of loose change, right? Now that sounds daunting. Well, let's take for a moment the fact that state and local governments are spending somewhere in the range of $70 or $75 billion a year on infrastructure right now. So put that in the mix. Let's assume that there is private money, and I don't know whether Tom is going to talk about this, but I know from my investigations by dealing with the European Infrastructure Bank that there is significant private money willing to get into financing the rebuilding and the building of American infrastructure. That's U.S. money, and that's money from Europe, money from China, and even money from Latin America as well. When I tried to lease the Pennsylvania Turnpike, a long-term lease, the winning bidder was a Spanish company by the name of Albertus. This was back in 2006. They bid $12.8 billion. For complicated reasons, the legislature turned it down. Boy, would they love to have that $12.8 billion back today. So let's assume there's $35 billion of private money willing to come in if we structure it right. So that leaves a federal investment of about $180 to $190 million. Now, when the CBO scores, they never score offsets. I don't know if that is something that's occurred to you when people say, oh, the programs for cities are too expensive. We can't do a historic tax credit or historic rehabilitation tax credit because it costs the Treasury too much. And then I feel like the kid in the back of the classroom who raises his hands and says, wait a second. It produces all these jobs, and those people earn a nice living, and they pay federal income taxes. And the companies that make increased profits because of these investments also pay federal income tax. Where's the set-off? Assume for the moment that an infrastructure program at this level would produce another $25 billion of federal taxes. So we're down to $165 billion a year. Still not chump change. Now, I know you've just come fresh from the debate, But anybody have a clue what we're spending in Afghanistan and Iraq together right now? Right now. And I'm just talking about on the books. You know we're spending a ton of money off the books, the Blackwaters, et cetera. I used to say at this point that I would give anybody who came up with the right answer 2 tickets to the next Pittsburgh Pirates World Series game. Unfortunately, or actually fortunately, the Pirates are doing well enough that that's not a joke anymore. But anybody want to hazard a guess? It's about $165 billion. We're spending $2 billion a week in Afghanistan, and even with our reduced complement in Iraq, we're spending about $50 billion a year. And by the way, we've also put nearly $100 billion into the Iraqi infrastructure and $100 billion into the Afghani infrastructure. Again, I feel about like the little kid in the back of the class raising my hand and saying, wait, what about us? What about us? What about the U.S. of A? Well, obviously, that money is not going to be available all in one full swoop. And obviously, there are other demands. And the fact that you've passed a resolution saying some of that money should be allocated to the cities is symptomatic of those demands. But the point is, there is money available. The point is, there is money available. The point is, when we need to find it, we find it. We absolutely find it. When I was mayor of Philadelphia, I had the good fortune of testifying before the Senate Finance Committee. I think Tom Cochran will remember this. Lloyd Bentsen, the senator from Texas, was the chairman of the Finance Committee. And I laid out a plan for recovery of America's cities. This was 1992 or 3, I forget. And it would have cost $5 billion, a lot of money in 1992, 93, I guess still a lot of money. And Senator Bentsen, after asking me a few questions, he said, Mayor, you have to understand, we just don't have the money. And I said, Senator, most respectfully, 6 weeks ago, you all allocated $5 billion to the Soviet Union to help the Soviet recovery, the Russian recovery. I said, if you can find $5 billion for that, you can find $5 billion for American cities. No ifs, ands, and buts about it. So, Washington can find the money, and they better find the money, and they better find it soon, because there is no answer to the failure to invest. We're ready. The Chamber of Commerce and the AFL-CIO have stood up for renewed investment in the American infrastructure and for raising resources. The American people, notwithstanding the current mindset of the American people to cut the deficit, the American people consistently say that cutting the deficit is the second most important thing in their minds. Jobs is number one. Jobs is number one. And in the election of 2010, clearly the most conservative, anti-spending election in probably anybody of our lifetimes, with the possible exception of Tom Cochran, who was around for Jefferson's first election. In that election, there were ballot issues, referendums, involving transportation infrastructure. And in that atmosphere, that anti-spending atmosphere, 61% of those ballot initiatives calling for more tolling, more taxes, or more borrowing, 61% were passed by a margin of 64%. So the American people get it. They understand that infrastructure is an investment, that we get value, we get a return on that investment. Now's the time to act. Now's the time to act. Now, I want every single one of you who is not a member of Building America's Future, and many of the cities are, and Antonio heads up our urban program, I want every one of you to go online and sign up as a member. We don't ask for a dime from you, but we ask for your participation. The way to do it is to go online, bafuture.org, bafuture.org, and say, I'd like to have my city sign up as a member. Building America's Future is all governmental entities, all who are hoping to speak with one voice. And what we are about to launch, and I want Frank to hear this, we're about to launch a campaign, an outreach campaign and an advertising campaign, everywhere in the country except Washington, D.C. Because, folks, we can talk as long as we want, as loud as we want, but we're never going to convince people inside the Beltway that it's okay to spend money. I was on a Sunday show, January of 2010, with Mike Pence, who's a good man. Mike is at that time was the ranking member of the House Budget Committee. And I wasn't on the show with Mike at the time, but they showed me a tape of him at the CCAP convention, and he was banging the podium saying, I say no to, we're the party of no to taxes, no to borrowing, no to spending. And then the moderator, after the clip was done, said, Governor, what do you think about that? I said, it's a prescription for disaster. It will make America a second-rate economic power in shorter time than any of you believe. So Fox News, not one to shy away from controversy, invited Congressman Pence and I on the same program. When we came on the program, Congressman Pence went first, and he basically gave the same riff: no spending, no borrowing, no taxes. And then it was my turn, and I said, Congressman Pence, you seem like a reasonable guy to me. Truth be told, he actually didn't, but I've been doing those shows long enough. You want to be the nice guy. I said, you seem like a reasonable guy to me. Tell our viewers how we're going to keep our infrastructure, our roads, our bridges, our highways, our dams, our levees, how are we going to keep them safe if we don't invest in their upkeep? There was about 20 seconds of silence. And the best Congressman Pence could come up with is, hey, there you Democrats go again, using the word invest when you really mean spend. Well, infrastructure is not a Republican or Democratic issue. Jim Inhofe, one of the most conservative members of the United States Senate, is for infrastructure spending. He says it's the second most important thing the government can do behind defense spending. So it's time. We need to raise money, and I'm going around the country trying to raise money for this outreach campaign and for this advertising campaign. Terry O'Sullivan of the Laborers Union. The laborers do a lot of the bridge and road work in Union states. They've put out billboards in 4 states in which they say, the bridge you're about to go over is structurally deficient. We have 70,000 structurally deficient bridges in the United States. Bingo. Call Congressman Jones, et cetera, et cetera, et cetera. Terry said he wanted to put a second sign on the other side of the bridge saying, glad you made it. But the lawyers talked him out of it. The point is, we're going to invest a lot of money doing outreach and advertising. And some of that outreach means mayors writing op-ed pieces, mayors talking to their Chamber of Commerce. Just get the message to congressmen that, okay, we know that we're not spending money right now, but it's okay to invest money in our infrastructure. You get a free pass if you do that. If we do that, we can be the country that builds again. We can be the country that takes on challenges again. We can be the country that does great things again. And we better do it fast. Thank you all very, very much.
Thank you, Governor, for being with us today, but also thank you for your voice. You know, he's no longer governor, he's a private citizen, but he's so passionate about this issue. He knows where the future is. The future's here at home, and I want to thank you for agreeing to come and speak to us. I'll give him a big hand. He says it's the only thing he does for free anymore. Thank you very much, Governor Ed Rendell. And now I am pleased to introduce Tom Donahue, the President and CEO of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. You know, since assuming his position in 1997, he's built the Chamber into a lobbying and political powerhouse with expanded influence across the globe. As I stated this morning during my year as President of the Conference of Mayors, we're going to focus on job creation, elevating the role of cities. And one of the organizations that we're going to forge a new partnership with is the U.S. Chamber of Commerce. You know, I dare say that the U.S. Chamber of Commerce and the AFL-CIO don't usually see things eye to eye. And yet, a few weeks ago, Tom Donahue, after being briefed on America Fast Forward, graciously accepted not just to get behind it, but to begin to aggressively advocate for infrastructure investment in the United States, to advocate for innovative financing tools. And it was great, you know, at a time of the partisanship and the bickering that we see there, we had Tom Donahue of the U.S. Chamber of Commerce, we had Richard Trumka of the AFL-CIO, I was there, Scott Smith was there, Democrat and Republican, the chairman of transportation, John Mica, was there, and Barbara Boxer on the Senate side. There is bipartisan support for this idea. And so I'd like to welcome someone, both of these individuals. I wanted to be here today because when we talk about jobs, everybody, the best way to build jobs is to rebuild America's cities. Help me in welcoming Tom Donahue, who understands that as well as anyone.
Thank you. Well, Mayor, I'm honored to be here, but I'm also experienced at this, and I have looked at the clock. Plane schedules are coming behind us. You had a vigorous debate this morning, and we got started a little late, so I'm going to give an accordion speech. Accordion to how much time you have.
I like that.
And I don't have as much accordion as I did before, so first of all, let me just say thank you to everybody up and down the table, the ones that were here, the ones that are here. We got that out of the way. Second, let me say in just a moment, I'm going to express some of my views on the whole question of infrastructure. This morning at the Chamber, we released a major study that we do every year now on innovative states, on states that are enterprising states, going out to create jobs. And we had 6 of those governors there. And I told the governors, now that I'm finished with this, I'm going up to Baltimore and talk to the people that have to make it work. And so I'm here on that. And I want just fundamentally to say the following. There's a big sign on the front of the Chamber of Commerce of the United States that says, jobs, jobs, jobs. We must create 20 million jobs in the next 10 years to take care of the people that lost their employment, although we're going to have to retrain some of them, and we're going to end to the people, the young people coming into the workforce. This is a real and serious challenge because many of those jobs that have been lost are never coming back. And they've been lost over the last 15 or 20 years in a very, very positive way. We've driven the productivity of this country forward every year, beyond what most people around the world are doing. And those jobs, when you improve information technology, you improve the supply chain, you do all those things to become so efficient, those jobs are not coming back. So we need to create new jobs. We need to create jobs based on innovation and new growth. And we are absolutely committed to doing that. So how do you have to do it? First, you've got to go out and in a vigorous way recognize that 95% of the people we sell stuff to live outside this country. And while we've been sitting around for the last couple of years, killing trade agreements that everybody else is already taking advantage of, jobs have been going down the street. So we're hopeful, working with Bill Daley in the White House and others, that we're going to put those 3 free trade agreements in place, and then after that, another, and then a global agreement, because it's going to create all sorts of American jobs. Now, I've heard all the arguments that it won't do it, but let me explain something. The EU has made a deal with Korea. The Canadians have made a deal with Colombia. And if we don't do these 3 agreements by midsummer, we're going to lose over the next year 400,000 jobs. That's a dumb idea. The second thing that we need to do is to work very carefully to make sure that we have capital, investment money, working capital for America's small and medium-sized businesses. And I am very concerned that the Dodd-Frank bill, with all of its wonderful intentions, is going to strangle that system that provides that capital. Now, bigger companies are sitting on a lot of money. They're sitting on a lot of money because of the third problem. And that is, look, we all bellyache about regulation. It's part of my job. I get up in the morning, ring the bell. Regulation, I don't like it. But and we've dealt with that for a long time. But now we're getting into very, very serious times with the EPA. We're getting in serious times in the capital markets, the new health care bills that are multiplications and explosions of regulation, and people are sitting around saying, well, I think I'll hold on to my money. I don't think I'll go into that business. I don't think I'll hire any people. I need to know what the answer to that question is, and so the Chamber has a massive effort to go out and get people to think about this, to find new ways to deal with this in the Congress, to force the Congress to vote up or down, yes or no, on these things if it's big enough. You know, this regulatory system, whoever knew? I never read it in the Constitution. I never read it anywhere in the Founding Fathers. It's something we sort of put in place to do the work after the Congress passed the bill, and it's bigger than it's now the tail wagging the dog. Now, let me get to the next thing we have to do. If you're a high school graduate, your unemployment rate's 9.1% and really higher, but that's the stated. If you have a college graduate and a master's degree, your rate goes down. If you're not a high school graduate, you're a 30% unemployed possibility. And many of those people were the people that were working commercial real estate and building homes and doing all that. Now it's coming back a little at a time, but it's a long, long time before those people get reemployed, and they're the people most in need of a job. Now, I will give you as many arguments as Governor Rendell, very good talk that he gave, and I appreciate his work, did on why we have to do infrastructure. Remember, I used to run the American Trucking Associations. I know a lot about infrastructure, and we damn well better fix it. And if we had not had this recession, we'd already hit the wall. And the ability to generate everything from electricity to water to transportation to ports, we need to do this. But the fundamental reason beyond all that we need to do it, if you believe that jobs are the religion of the year, then we've got to do it because the people most vulnerable to not being reemployed are at risk, because we're not going back to building all those houses now, but we could put them all to work alongside other workers if we would hurry up and do something about infrastructure. So let me make my points about that, Mayor, and then I'll sit down. First of all, we need to have a federal highway bill, because the states pay 25%, the mayors and local communities pay 25%, the federal government pays 50%. Now, we won't argue for about 1 minute about how much is in it, but we need a long-term highway bill, 6 years, because this mayor and the governors I were with this morning, they're not putting their cash up for some 90-day deal. They're going to wait and they're sure it's going to be there. They don't want to holding the bag. Look at what Christie did in New Jersey. He wanted to build that damn tunnel because he knew for sure who was going to end up holding the bag. So we need a highway bill. There's highway, bridges, transit, all that, and we have a good amount of money around, not enough. And then if you have a little courage, you can realize it's been 18 years since we had an increase in the federal fuels tax. 18 years, and in that period of time, trucks and cars have more than doubled their miles per gallon, plus there are more of them. So if you figure that out, let me give you the math. You're getting about 40% of the muscle you used to get to maintain and build highways and transit and other issues, and that's not a very good idea. Now, there are other very smart things going on. The governor mentioned the infrastructure bank. I was up there with Trumpka and all those guys saying infrastructure bank, good idea. We're looking at all sorts of innovative ways to do this, but you got to be really careful. Some of the innovative discussion is to really be innovative, and some of it is people that want to steal money from infrastructure and do something else with it. So those kind of innovations we don't need. We need innovations that put more money into infrastructure. Now, we at the Chamber have just completed the first year, and we're going to do this every year, of an analysis of how we're doing in 3 quadrants. All the transportation, water and energy, and then everything else. And we're looking at where do we stand on our infrastructure and what is it doing? Will it increase or decrease our GDP? Pretty simple. We're getting to the point now we can quantify what you're going to do to the economy, whether you do infrastructure or not. So I look forward to working with labor unions. By the way, Trumka was over to speak to my board meeting the other day. He was particularly gracious. That's because I'm going to speak to his. We're going to work. I disagree with him on more things than you can shake a stick at, but on infrastructure, we got to do this issue. And we're going to work with the governors. We're going to work with everybody in town. I'm listening to this sad story, though. Oh, we don't have enough money, and nobody wants a tax. And look, if you don't put people to work, you're going to bleed to death out of the bottom just trying to support them. If you can get people back to work, they pay taxes. I told you about the infrastructure of energy. I wrote to the president. I'm going to stop in a minute. I wrote to the president. I'm getting warmed up. I'm having a good time. I wrote to the president last week or 10 days ago. I said, look, Mr. President, I was very impressed with what you said in a couple of speeches in the last month about we've got to get out and develop our own sources of energy. You know, we use 20 million barrels of oil in this country every day. So, you know, why are we buying this stuff from people like the Nigerians and Chavez and all those people? What the hell do we need that for? We've discovered in this country and we're still looking, more than 100 years worth of natural gas, and we're only scratching the surface. There is more oil offshore, onshore, in Alaska that you can environmentally sensibly get. And there are lots of other things we can do in nuclear power and clean coal and by the way, the green energies. So I said, you got a problem, Mr. President. There isn't anybody listening to you. Now, I'm paraphrasing. I was a little more respectful. I said, you're telling everybody to do it, and none of your team is listening to you because they're out saying, no, 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 and you can't go here. So we had a deep oil mishap. Is that a reason to stop shallow oil drilling? No, because we are coming up on an election, and I have great respect for the environmental community that raises more than $400 million a year, and wonder where they'll be in the election. So this is an issue we've got to get into. And I have great respect for people that run for office, but we've got to sort of get around this thing on infrastructure. We need to do this if A, you want to hire people, B, you want to be efficient, C, you want to live. You know, we could cut down the deaths on the highway with high multiples if we did this. So look, the bottom line is you are the people that have the most pressure to bring to bear. Lean on your congressman, lean on your senator, lean on your government, your governor, and go lean on the president, and maybe we can all get something done. Thank you very much.
I like that. Very good. Very good. He knows how to talk here. Great. Great. Wow. Thank you, Tom, for being here today. And I think, judging by the response that you got from the mayors, you'll see that the mayors are very interested in reducing regulations. As an example, one of the things that all of both Democrat and Republican, when we stood up on infrastructure investment, we also talked about accelerating approval processes, including CEQA. We believe in CEQA, but we also believe that we have to accelerate and make it work and not unnecessarily delay those projects. And I want to thank you because, folks, we need to be listening to voices like this. These are the voices that are striking a middle ground. We've heard, and we are, a bipartisan organization. We're an organization of mayors that think out of the box, that are practical and problem-solving. And we're going to have to speak to both sides of the aisle if we're going to get them to understand that they can't keep on making excuses about the fact that we're not putting enough of our people to work. you know, it's interesting, both the AFL-CIO and the Chamber know that if we're not investing in workforce development, and Jeff Immelt spoke to the president about that in North Carolina, if we're not investing in workforce development, we're not going to be able to retrain the displaced workers for the jobs that will open up in the new economy, and particularly in this area. So I want to thank you for coming, Tom. Let's give him a big hand. Now, and to members, I want to encourage you to participate in one of the most informative host city workshops this afternoon that are listed in your program. I know that all of you have had a great time here and at the closing event last evening. Some of you are on your way to your cities. Before we adjourn, I'd like to do something I always do in my hometown, and I'm sorry that I didn't do that when I first stood up. I grew up in a family where we always had to serve ourselves. So whenever I'm served, I like to say thank you to the servers. So let's give them a big hand. Thank you. And with that, we stand adjourned.